First Thessalonians chapter 3. We have a lot of kids here today. I loved it last week being able to see all the kids here. I just loved it. I want to talk about this game that maybe some of you kids know. Maybe some of you older kids know. Bat spin. Remember the game bat spin? Anybody ever played bat spin? So if you didn't know, here's how it's played. Either you've done it or you've seen somebody do it. You've got a starting line over here, of course, and it's basically a relay race, right? You've got a starting line over here, two people who are lined up, and then so many paces away you have a baseball bat, lying in the grass there, or on the floor, depending on where you're playing, indoor or outdoor. And the guy's going to blow the whistle, and these people are going to run to the bat. And they're going to get the bat, and they're going to put their head on the bat, and they're going to spin around that bat 10 times. And then they're going to drop that bat, put that bat down, and then they're going to run back to the same place where they began, start the finish line. So that's how the bat spin game is played. We all know that, right? And it's fun. We laugh at the people who... Here's why we laugh at the people. Because the way they approach the bat is different from the way they run from the bat. In other words, when they start here, they start running in a straight line. Everybody runs in a straight line. But when they run back to that same line, after spinning around that bat 10 times, they run back in probably a wobbly or a wavering line. It's not even falling over altogether. There are very few people who have some kind of gyroscopic mechanism that allows them to completely navigate 10 spins around that bat and to run back in just as straight a line as they went toward the bat. We all know how the game is played. That's what makes it so much fun. But what made the difference? We introduced a challenge. The challenge was the bat. And they had to spin around the bat. And that's what made the difference between the way they ran to the bat and the way they ran away from the bat. There was a challenge that we interjected into the whole race. That's what made the difference. What is it, beloved, that makes somebody that you know, maybe somebody who's near and dear to you, who began running their Christian race in a straight path, not imperfect or impeccable, but in a straight path. There was undeniable loyalty to Christ and the gospel, an overwhelming and visible desire to serve the Lord, to get involved in some kind of ministry, to maybe go on a missions trip or to sacrifice in some way. What is it that made a person who began running their race in a straight line, make that person start walking in a wobbly, wavering line? You know what I'm talking about. You know somebody like that, possibly. What is it that happened? Most likely we introduced a challenge. Something came into their lives that threw them off. A challenge, trial, a betrayal, a disappointment, a disenchantment, a disillusionment, whatever else you want to put in there. And not always, but very often it's the case. I'm aware of the fact, brothers and sisters, that I'm standing before a group of people who are seeking, some are seeking the Lord. They want to know more about the faith. They've got questions. They've been introduced to somebody who is in the faith, and they're walking with the Lord. And because of their dynamic testimony and their authentic life, that other person is looking for more answers and just waiting it out and exploring more of the Christian faith. But I'm also aware of the fact that the same process is working conversely. That there are some who grew up in the Christian faith who are exploring walking away from it. And it's a heart-wrenching thing to think about. Because the reality is there's something that they encountered, most likely, and that was a challenge. It is interesting, isn't it, that the same sun that melts the wax hardens the clay. It's interesting that the two people can go through the same situation and come out with a different response. Dads, you played this game with your little ones. You're in the pool. Your little ones are in the pool. You've got two little ones that say in the pool. Dad has a bright idea. Hey, how about if I toss you? And I'll toss you over there and you'll make a splash and it'll be fun. And the little kid buys into it. Okay, let's do it, Daddy. So he takes child number one and he makes a big fuss. Let's have a countdown. And then all of a sudden he launches her. And she goes under, and then she pops back up, and she's got nothing but shock and fear on her face. Dad goes over and says, "You want to do it again?" No, I don't want to do it again. Child number two. Do you want Daddy to throw you in the pool? Yes, of course, let's do it. Picks him up, makes a big game of it. 1, 2, 3, tosses the child, and the kid goes, plunges under the water, comes up, and he's got a bright smile on his face. And what does he say? Let's do it again, Daddy, let's do it again. Same dad, same circumstance, two different people, two different responses. This last 3 months, I've encountered different people along the way in just different conversations. Of course, we're very limited to, say, Zoom or phone calls. There are some people who just, I've been away from the church for so long, I'm wondering if I even need a church. I've been away from Christian fellowship for so long, I wonder if I can even get along more without Christian fellowship. That's one response. And I'm certain that maybe that's represented by a few here. And then there's another that says, I've been away from Christian fellowship for so long, I can't wait to get back. Same circumstance, two different responses, two different people. Paul's got this going on in 1 Thessalonians. This is probably more personal than any of his letters, any of his correspondences. And as Pastor Manny wrote, and we're going to look at it again, there is this burden that Pastor Paul has. And even though he wasn't a pastor, he was pastoral in the way he approached the people that he was caring for. And I want you to look at verse 3. It's a very interesting word in verse 3. And he's got this concern, this burden that's on his heart, that no one be moved by these afflictions. See that word moved? Now, this is the only time that the word is used in the New Testament, but it's related to another group of words in the New Testament. And that word, the one that's related to, is the word that we get our word seismology from, or a seismologist, or a seismograph. You know what a seismograph is? A seismologist? A seismograph is an instrument that measures the intensity of an earthquake. Seismology is the study of earthquakes. Seismologist is the guy, the scientist, the man or woman who engages in these things. Seismology. It's the shaking of the earth. As a matter of fact, I love another translation that says it, that puts it this way, so that no one would be unsettled by these trials. In fact, the NLT says to keep you from being shaken by the trials that you were going through. Paul is concerned. He's concerned by the fact that these beloved people that he poured his life into and that he invested his life into, when he had to leave, he gets word that they were going through such a difficult time. He is so burdened by them. He's kept awake at night, if you will, to the point that he is awfully concerned for them, and he is concerned for this, that they will be moved by these afflictions. That this straight path that they embarked upon the Christian life with, because they encounter a challenge, will now turn into a wobbly and a wavering walk. And Paul says, I'm burdened by this. And he's going to go on in that immediate context, in that immediate paragraph, to talk about what might possibly be behind this. But regardless, he's got this burden, this concern like a parent would with any child, or with any of us who have anything that we do not want to lose. It's natural for a person to have this care for someone who's in peril. It's natural. Our hearts move toward people in pain and in peril. I'll never forget. Again, this is today's our second son's birthday, 30 years old today. Years ago, many years ago, when we started the church, there was a family that was coming to our church. He was the manager over at a hotel. And you can see the hotel in right off of 309. And while you're on 22 heading out to Whitehall, you can see that hotel on the left. And so he let us use the pool. We went to this pool one time. Our kids were just very, very little. And we had fun in this pool. Well, Jordan was in one of these floaty things, this ring. He was in the floaty thing. He couldn't swim, but he was in this floaty thing. And I just thought it would be fun that we would play in the pool and I'd give him a shove. And when I give him a shove, that he would just scoot along in the water. Well, I gave him a shove, and instead of scooting along in the water, he actually toppled. He tipped over. So his feet were now where his head was, and his head was now where his feet were, and he's underwater. And he's still stuck on the ring. And it was an immediate thing and an instantaneous thing. And we didn't let him stay there for longer than a minute at least, but no. He went toward him, and I realized he's in danger. He needs help. Well, you don't always think about stuff like that, right? You just go toward the need. Go toward the need. We went right to him and right at him. As soon as his face came out of the water, am I right or wrong, sweetheart? He let out the biggest scream you could imagine. I mean, I'm sure everybody there was saying, what kind of parents are these people, you know? The dad's drowning his kid. We do this, we move toward the need, and we're anxious. We're concerned about things and about people. And of course, there's no comparison between things and people, but there's a reason why we're so concerned. It's because of this vast investment that we have made into things, or people, or the prospect of being without that thing or person. This is why our hearts are moved with somebody who's in peril. And the nearer and the dear, the more anxious we can become. We don't want to psychoanalyze this whole idea of worry and anxiety, but we need to be real about our human, God-given emotions, the way we're wired. You will be up at night, dads and moms. You will stay awake at night. If somebody wants to put it in the category of worry or anxiety, feel free. That's a legitimate concern that you will have because of the welfare of the people, namely your children, that you love, and you want them to be okay. And if you get an idea that they're in peril, or that they're in danger, or that they are engaged in something that might imperil their lives or even their souls, you better believe you're going to be up at night thinking about it. The Apostle Paul is talking about being up at night, day and night. It's consuming him. How are these people doing? I've loved them. I've cared for them. I've taught them the Word. I've lived in front of them. I've been authentic, and I've given them, as you read the epistle, not just the gospel only, but our own souls also. He turns his worry into prayer because he says, I prayed for you day and night. But he's still concerned about it. He's still thinking about it. As he gets up in the morning, goes to bed at night. This is just the way it is. Listen, dads, moms, every single one of you who raised your children in the faith, to love Jesus, to walk with Jesus, to serve Jesus, you want your child to remain in the faith. And one of the most heart-wrenching, overwhelmingly difficult responses from a parent is to know that that child, who's been raised to love Jesus and to walk with Jesus and to live for Jesus and to serve Jesus, has come to a place in his or her life where they say, I don't know if I have any place in my life for Jesus. It's a very, very, very hard. This is what Paul's got going on. These are his spiritual children. And he's kept up at night wondering, are they going to stay true to the faith? I wasn't a fan of Johnny Cash for one reason or another. Maybe it was the country thing. I don't know. But when I was researching for this, I came across this song on YouTube. It's called My Children Walk in Truth. I prayed to feel more joy in my salvation, a selfish prayer I finally came to know. For the greatest joy while living comes to me when I am giving children bread of life and watch them grow. And my greatest joy is knowing that my children walk in truth, and that they are giving you, Lord, of their fire and strength of youth. Yes, I found the greatest joy in my salvation is knowing that my children walk in truth. What a great song. What a great sentiment. It comes right there from 3 John 4. He says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Every parent who raises their child in the faith wants that child to remain in the faith. Just a natural thing. So let me be honest and transparent for a moment for the sake of those who are here thinking, this is where I am. Pastor, I'm not the former group of those who are exploring the faith. I grew up in the faith. I'm exploring what else is out there besides the faith. Why do some walk away? I mean, it's everywhere now. We're hearing about prominent people who are just walking away from the faith. They want to espouse their love. Well, young things are very susceptible, aren't they? They're very tender, they're very vulnerable, they're very easily moldable and manipulated. That's not to put anyone down, that's just to recognize the reality of the tenderness with which parents are to raise their children and the wisdom and understanding. Listen, on just a non-person level, we had a mild spring. My wife knows better than me, and many of you know better than even both of us about planting and flowers and annuals and this and that. And typically, Mother's Day is sort of that benchmark, right? If you wait until Mother's Day and you wait after, and then you put your plants in, you're pretty safe. Well, we had a mild spring. Trace put a lot of work into putting these annuals in the ground. And I'll never forget the time that there was a forecast of frost. We went to bed that night. She was asking, I wonder if these things will survive. He said, just a plant. That's the point. That's the point. It's just a plant. And yet there's still a concern that consumes you. Maybe not consumes to the point of paralysis, but a thought nonetheless. It says, I put time and effort and expense into this thing, these plants. They're tender, they're vulnerable, they're young. And I'm afraid that when I wake up in the morning, they're going to be dead because the frost came. Well, certainly part of her next day routine was to check on whether those plants survived, and they didn't. Every parent recognizes that every child of theirs is going to have a crisis of faith. It's a hard thing. Because the reality is, parents, most of you have had a crisis of faith. There's been something that you endured. And for some reason, we'll attribute it to God's grace before we know anything more. Certainly, we'll attribute it to God's grace that you were the one that the sun melted the wax instead of hardened your heart, your clay. Paul is so consumed by this. And he's going to say, if you have your Bible still open, he's going to say in verse 5, when I could bear it no longer. He's thinking about it. He's thinking about it. He's thinking about it more. And when I could bear it no longer, I sent to learn about your faith. For fear. And who does he send? Well, he says earlier, verse 2, we sent Timothy, our brother. No one like him. Paul's right-hand man. Paul dispatches Timothy to them to say, make sure, tell me how to do it. And what was Timothy going to do? Notice verse 2. Establish and exhort you in your faith. We'll come back to that in a moment. But notice Paul says in verse 5, when I could bear it no longer, I sent to learn about your faith, for fear that somehow the tempter, the enemy of our souls, had tempted you, and our labor would be in vain. You see, God does allow things to come into our lives to build us up, and then Satan will at the same time use the same thing to tear us down. God, he brings things into our lives to draw us closer to him. Satan has a design to use the same thing to move us away from him. So Paul is recognizing the fact that this is a supernatural thing going on, and while Paul told them to not be surprised by this, because this is what was going to come upon them, yet he's still nonetheless aware of the fact that this could be the thing that could make them say, it's too much, it's too much. I love what you told me, Paul. I love what the promises of the gospel are, and I love this person called Jesus, at least as you presented, but I'm feeling like there was more than I was expecting from this Christian life that I'm not getting. Maybe because of betrayal, disillusionment, disenchantment, disappointment, whatever else. And Paul said, I'm really concerned for them. Now what happens? Timothy sends word back. Verse 6, Timothy has come to us from you, and here's what he said. He's brought us good news of your faith and love, and reported that you always remember us kindly and long to see us as we long to see you. I've been thinking about that passage, even though whole separation. To think that maybe possibly being apart was part of God's plan. How I can all put it together, I don't know. But God wasn't surprised by the last 3 months, nor is he surprised by what will happen in the following 3 months. We have no idea. We take this day by day, week by week. With the wise among us, I think, recognize that what we have today can be taken away tomorrow. We don't take anything for granted. But we recognize that in this separation, there was a longing to reunite, to be regathered again. For this reason, brothers, in all of our distress, verse 7, and affliction, we have been comforted about you through your faith. For now we live if you are standing fast in the Lord. And verse 10, we pray most earnestly night and day that we may see you face to face and supply what is lacking in your faith. This is Paul's pastoral heart. This is his desire. And that is that these whom he loves will not walk away from the faith that they once held so dear. So what are we to do then? What are we to do? We recognize that everybody's got a burden. Everybody's bearing something. Everybody. Few, if any, are exempt. The very first words of the book that Warren Wiersbe wrote, called When Bad Things Happen to God's People, he wrote this way: be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle. I'm not certain who first made that statement, but it gives wise counsel indeed. All of us are fighting battles, carrying burdens. We desperately need all the help we can get. The last thing any of us needs is for somebody to add to our problems. It isn't the normal demands of life that break us, it's the painful surprises. We find ourselves fighting battles in a war we never declared and carrying burdens for reasons we don't understand. I'm not talking about reaping what we sow, he goes on to say, because most of us are smart enough to know when and why that happens. If we break the rules, we have to accept the consequences. But sometimes things happen even when we don't break the rules. When life hands us these painful surprises, we start to ask questions. We wonder if perhaps we've been cheated. We begin to doubt that life makes any sense at all. Bad things do happen to God's people, and when these bad things happen, our normal response is to ask, why us? We all ask that at one point or another. Why us? Because we're all bearing burden. The people you sit next to or around are bearing some kind of burden. They had to overcome something to get here today, possibly. Or they had to overcome something to get where they are today. Abuse, neglect, intolerance, whatever else. We can go on and on and on and list these things that so many of you have had to deal with. And it was just enough in the enemy's arsenal to make you so disenchanted with the faith that you once loved that you said, if this is what the Christian life is about, or if this is what Christians are about, or if this is what God is about, I don't have anything to do with this. And you are one step away from moving away from the God you once said you loved, and the gospel you once said you were devoted to. We need to be aware of this. We need to understand, beloved, that your burden now becomes my blessing. See, look, now what I'm talking about. Because your burden becomes an opportunity for me to bless you. Notice how Paul responds. I love it. Notice verse 2. The two words. So Timothy comes to establish and to exhort. So when you read the word exhort, you read the word encourage. That's the idea here. That's the word. When you read the word establish, it's the same word that he uses later in the passage, that God would establish it. When you install a piece of furniture, a shelf or something, or you see something in your house that's sagging, I've done that, you've done that. What you would do, or even a roof, if on a grander scale, there's a roof that's sagging. Somebody comes in, an engineer or a contractor comes in, and he will buttress that roof. That's the word, to buttress. To come alongside and to shore up. Because I see that it's sagging. If you're a woodworker and there's a shelf that's sagging, you might need to put another piece of wood there. Maybe you put a face frame on it that helps to stiffen it, to bear the load of the bolts that you put on it or anything you put on it. And what Paul is saying is that there are Christians, and every single one of us is susceptible to this, who we get so burdened down, so weighed down by the cares of this life and by the trials and difficulties and challenges, if you will. And we need somebody to come alongside and to support us. To buttress this once firm shelf. To support it and to encourage it. They don't need us to chew them out. They don't need us to straighten them out. They need us to cheer them on. They need us to cheer them up. For heaviness in the heart of man makes it bow down, makes it stoop, but a good word makes it glad. I wish I could tell you. A while back we did a sermon series called Preaching to the Choir because it was a sense of talking to people who are now in church about the fact that there might be people in church hearing to the sermon series called Preaching to the Choir, because once they leave the faith or leave the church, you can't preach to them, you can't encourage them or exhort them down, because their hearts have become hard. So what we want to do is say, beloved, know that there's a possibility that the people around you are, they're bent low, they're burdened down, and they want just to know that somebody is recognizing them, and they're caring for them. And they're moving toward them, because what Paul did, he sent Timothy to them. We're so intimidated sometimes by people who are just having so many burdens. Like, what do I say? What do I do? I don't know what, I'm not trained. I get it. But man, there's just something about love, because as we said last week, love takes the first step, love goes the extra mile, and love moves toward. It moves toward the person in need. I guess, your wives go out shopping, they're out for hours, they go out grocery shopping, and you're sitting in the living room, you're having a wonderful time doing whatever you're doing, but you hear that she pulls down the driveway, and she pushes the button, the hatch opens back up. You know she's home. You can't ignore it. You can't hide from it. You can't pretend like you didn't hear it. You know she's home. You know she's got a car full of groceries, and and she's not going to obligate you to help her, but boy, there's an opportunity because she's going to be burdened down in a minute, and you get to be her blessing. Nobody's going to hold you accountable, possibly, if you don't. Nobody's going to say anything, but boy, you miss out on being her blessing. Yeah, sure, you can sit there in the living room and watch her carry all of these groceries that she's going to then put away for you and then make for you eventually throughout the week. And I get that. And she's probably not going to say, honey, can you help me? But you might be able to say, I see your burden down. How can I be your blessing? I get it. You can pretend like you don't see. You can pretend like you don't know. You can pretend like the people around you are all rosy and well-ordered and happy, or you can assume that everybody's bearing a burden. And it's not my job to straighten you out. It's not my job to chew you out. It's my job to cheer you on, to cheer you up. Because I know for all of you life stinks, or some of your life really has been really tough to you. I know that. I get it. And from a pastoral heart, I wish I could just say, I come alongside, come toward, say, remember the Lord, say, don't give up. Say to you what several wrestling coaches said to me, my junior high, senior high, even college years. Whatever you do, he drilled it into me and every one of my teammates, never, ever, ever quit. Never quit. If you are pinned and you get 6 points fall for the other team because you were trying to pin the other guy, that's one thing. But because you just can't endure these intense periods and you are just ready to give up, that is never forgivable. Never, ever, ever give up. And everybody on the team knows when the guy just gives up. That was one thing you were never, ever allowed to do in wrestling. Ever give up. And I recognize that in the Christian faith, it's easier said than done. But it's sure nice to know that we've got partners. It's sure nice to know that we've got people coming alongside and helping us. That I'm not alone. That I do have this bitterness because of this betrayal. And I do have this question about God because of His ways. And I do wonder, I'm at a crossroads in my faith, and I'm transitioning from, I'm no longer a kid, but I'm no longer an independent, on my own adult, and I'm making these choices, and changes are accompanying these choices, and what do I do? Where do I fit? What do I believe? Where am I going? And it's so hard for a parent. It's so hard for a parent to see a child go through that. It's so hard. It's so hard. You think that child is going to throw it all away and just walk all the way. And I'm here to tell you that doesn't happen as often as you think it does. But if you will take the time to come alongside and to recognize that he is bearing a burden, that he's expressing in a different way, or that she's bearing a burden that she's expressing in a different way that looks rebellious or insolent. I want to be your blessing. I want to be your blessing. I want to be here for you to help bear your burden. "100 years ago now, hard to believe, 1920s, two guys from Moody Bible Institute got together and wrote a song. Out in the highways and byways of life, many are weary and sad. Carry the sunshine where darkness is right, making the sorrow glad. Give as was given to you in your need, love as the Master loved you. Be to the helpless, the helper in need, under your vision of truth. Make me a blessing, make me a blessing, make me a blessing to someone today. We can do this. We find somebody with a burden, we say, I'm your blessing. I'm here to help. How can I help? Let's pray. Thank you, Father, for your faithfulness to us.